Well, welcome back to Relentless Talk Radio. We're on segment 3, which is usually the art and fashion section, but today we're doing a double philanthropy section, and we've got Marianne. Marianne, how do you say your last name?
It's pronounced Gouveia.
Gouveia, I love it.
It's Portuguese.
It's Portuguese. You're Portuguese and Italian, which is pretty cool. I'm Italian and Irish, so we got that in common. Can you do me a favor and tip your camera down so we can see your pretty face a little bit more? We've got those crazy other way. We've got those crazy banners from Be Live across your face, and I want people to see how pretty you are. A little bit more. Sorry.
More. Better?
Yeah, not really. You might want to see how I'm moving my camera. That's it. Cool. Right up, down a little bit. Right there. Perfect. Up a little bit. You had it perfect when you moved it up a little bit this way. We just want to make sure people can see your other way. There. Yay. Okay, that's good. Cool.
Okay.
So introduce yourself and tell us what your organization is.
Well, first of all, Michelle, thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. I'm Marianne Gouveia, and I am the founder and executive director of a local nonprofit called Eric's House. And Eric's House is a community-based organization that provides grief support for people who have lost somebody they love to alcohol, drugs, or suicide. So when you look at the cycle of suicide, we have a prevention, intervention, and postvention. And there are so many great organizations out there that focus on prevention. Teen Lifeline is one of them, AFSPs, big guys. They do really such great work. But we focus on postvention, where there are really very little resources. And we provide clinical support as well as a number of different holistic therapies to help people heal.
So you're one of the 13 organizations that I'm interviewing to be part of a project that I'm doing called the Art of Fearlessly Giving Back. And I do it once a year. It usually opens in November. Teen Lifeline is actually another organization on this list. So it's pretty cool that you're both pre and post suicide on the list, because my brother took his life in 1984. So I was very pleased to see the prevention piece of it, and I was even more pleased to see what you're doing. Now I looked through your biography, and you were actually doing grief and loss prevention prior to having some of the losses that you've had in your life. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting journey for me. I spent a number of years in a corporate role and decided that wasn't working for me. So
in aerospace,
in aerospace, which would actually be very, very exciting, but it stopped working for me. And so I decided to leave the industry and become a life coach and help people using some of my business skills, but also help them navigate rough waters, whatever circumstances in life that they were facing. And then I lost my son. And of course, then I really became focused and dedicated to helping other people heal, because as you know, it's really a difficult journey, and it's got a lot of layers of what we call complicated grief. And a lot of people just don't know where to go and what to do and who to talk to. And so we're fortunate. I feel really blessed, actually, to be able to bring a really talented group of people together to help others in our community.
Now, your son, Robert Gruler, is in my BNI chapter. I was just recently on his podcast, Gruler Nation. And what's really interesting is that Robert and I had a conversation about the Art of Fearlessly Giving Back, and he didn't really mention what he was doing with you with Eric's House. But your board member, Karen Janis, who is also a member of my BNI chapter, did. And she just kept on saying, no, you've really got to look at this. And so I had 48 charities, nonprofits / charities apply for this position. And once I read what you guys were doing, I knew that you had to come on board right away. So I moved a spot for you guys because I really believe in what you're doing. I think it's super important work.
Thank you.
32 years that from the time that I lost my brother, I guess is it 32? It might even be longer than that. I stopped doing the math basically, but I've learned so many people have had to go through traumatic loss. And if they haven't got any place to go afterwards, then you can have like double traumatic losses. You can have other things, you know, car accidents, alcoholism, all kinds of things happen when people don't have grief support. Mm-hmm. So you are, you and I had a little bit of a talk about the stigmatism of suicide.
We did.
So I don't say my brother committed suicide.
Right.
Because that is like committing a crime.
Right. And actually that is its origin. It actually wasn't considered a crime.
Right. And I think there's a whole religious piece of it. For some people believe that if you commit suicide, you go to hell.
Right. Not true.
So that was something I had to negotiate because I grew up Roman Catholic. I had to kind of figure out my own spiritual world, what that meant. What I say is my brother made a decision to take his life.
Yeah, that's a very good way to say it. And I always encourage people to say, you know, I lost my brother to suicide, or he died by suicide. I say my son died by suicide.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes a little bit of the fear out of the word. You know, the word is such a scary word.
But it is, it's a stigma. It took a while for me and my mother and my, you know, my father less so, because he could really care less what people think. My dad is
well, that's
he's like, whatever, you don't like me, screw you, right? But my mom and I had a little bit, he's the Italian, he's like, whatever.
Right.
My mom's the Irish one, and she and I has taken a while to kind of, for both of us, it took a while for us to kind of be able to share it more openly. Now I share it openly because I think it helps people. I think it helps people from the perspective of how I handle it, but also it lets them know that they're not alone. So, but the stigma is really kind of outdated. It needs to go.
There absolutely is. And, you know, my son, Eric, he had an addiction issue. He had, he became addicted to OxyContin, transitioned to heroin, struggled with sobriety, a very relevant topic today. And he went in and out of rehab, and he just got tired. And so one day he decided to leave. And I felt like I was faced with that double whammy of both, you know, a heroin addiction and a suicide.
Right.
It really took, and I didn't have any resources. It took me 4 or 5 weeks even to get in to see a counselor. And so, you know, I was afraid to talk about it. It's the kind of thing people whisper about and maybe talk about by the water cooler, but nobody really wants to come out and say it.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like I wanted to protect Eric and protect his privacy, but then I decided, you know, I need to speak out. And by my speaking out and telling my story and Eric's story, so many other people began to come and speak out. And so, you know, I really encourage everybody to be honest about these losses, because the truth is it does help prevent future losses. We see clusters of losses. We see multiple suicides in a family, or we even see additional, you know, parents wanting to go find their children or be with their children. And it's the same way with addiction. We see multiple addictions in a single family. And so those families are distressed after a loss. And just by getting it out, just by having somebody to talk to about it, can really help with the healing.
Well, you know, in 1984, when it happened to our family, there really wasn't anyone to talk to, right? And my mom is sober 21 years now. I'm sober 19 years, right? And the length of time that we've been sober, I can't tell you how many people have had a similar experience. And so it's super cool that you're doing this for folks that are not in some type of recovery program, because my mom and I feel blessed to be sober because we have a whole network of people that we can talk to about our stuff. Yeah. But if you're not, you know, I guess cursed, right, with an addiction issue, who do you talk to? I mean, maybe you're not active in your church, and maybe your spiritual life is not something that is forefront for you. You know, who do you talk to? You can go to a therapist, but I don't know. There's a difference between therapy that helps you to kind of deal with your own issues and grief therapy. It's a completely different thing, in my opinion.
There is. And a lot of really good therapists are not necessarily trained in grief. And many of them really don't want to go to the suicide space because it's so complicated. And it really does take a long time. But in Eric's house, we have we have clinical services where we provide counselors by licensed counselors and accredited life coaching to deal with kind of the post-traumatic growth stuff that happens after loss. But our counselors are mostly lost survivors, or they have been touched by addiction in some way. So they really understand the journey of the people that come into Eric's House for services. And so we're really blessed to have them.
Well, and I think that's true with, any kind of addiction or loss. If you can talk to somebody who's been through it, it makes it easier to kind of, you and I automatically have a bond because I lost a sibling.
Right.
You lost a sibling. My dad's is surviving cancer right now. You've survived cancer.
Right.
I just think that people think that, you go get the big job in the aerospace company and then everything is all, peaches and cream after that. You get the right job, you make the right living, and you get the right education, that you're just going to skip over all these traumatic things in your life. And life is in session all the time, right? I mean,
that happens. Yeah.
I really admire what you're doing. And I'm super, as a fellow survivor, a person in recovery, I just have to say that what you're doing is super important work, and I'm very proud of you and of Robert and of your entire board for doing the work that you're doing, because it's just super important. It's super important work. So the 13 charities that I think you're the 11th now. I have 2 more to interview. Every single one of you is doing such great stuff. It's going to be really hard to narrow it down to 3.
Well, I'm sure it is.
With people helping me.
Yeah.
Because I want to write you all a big check. I mean,
of course.
Really important work that you're doing. So thank you very much for what you're doing, for coming on Relentless Talk Radio. And I cross my fingers for you. I hope that I'm able to write you a big check in December.
All right, Michelle. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Have a good rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve Mix is up next with Relentless Talk Radio. Take care.